are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York. Hey, what's happening?
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, The Art of War. I hope all is well with everyone. And it's a beautiful day. Every day that you can get up is a beautiful day. As many of you may know, we're on our path towards Harlem Week 2021. Starts on August the 6th. I have the pleasure today to interview a member of the Harlem Week board and a person who has been involved in the arts, especially in theater, for many years. She has a communications company, the Walker Communications Company, and she has done a lot of work not only in Harlem, but in New Jersey PAC and other locations, and as one of the major influences of many of the Broadway plays coming up to Harlem during Harlem Week, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I would like for the listeners to meet Donna Walker Q. Donna?
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine. You know, they say at a certain time in your life, well, actually any time in your life that you can get up, you're blessed. So, you know, I got up it's in the afternoon, so I've been blessed for a whole day. So
Wonderful.
No complaints, no complaints. And as you can see, I guess in the introduction films, I've been on a special diet, herbal diet, which is I've lost a little bit of weight. And, I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm blessed. How about yourself?
That's great. I'm fine. It's been a very busy summer with a number of projects, including preparing for Harlem Week. But I was able to take a brief vacation, and that was wonderful.
That's good for you. The next time you take a vacation, I want you to use we have through the Harlem Tourism Board partnered with a company that I developed, Art War Travel and Tours. And whenever you want to do bookings and get before you go to Expedia or any of the others for hotels and all of that, you can go to Art War Travel and Tours .biz, and hopefully that will be not only helpful to you but also to the tourism board, and of course to me as a business owner. But that's something that I'm passing along for people to be aware of. But tell the listeners a little bit about you, Donna. I mean, we don't have 2 shows or 3 shows because that's how long it would take based on your history. But give us a little bit of your a brief introduction so that as we start to talk, they know who they're listening to.
Certainly. My name, Donna Walker Kuhn. I am president of Walker International Communications Group. We are a boutique marketing, audience development, community engagement, diversity consulting agency. And I am my pronouns are she, her. I am on the land of the Lenape tribe, located in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
I
I didn't
am,
know that.
yes, yes. And, I have been in the business of the arts my entire life. I was born and raised in Chicago, the South Side, and my parents were part of the Great Migration of the 1950s from the South to the North. And I began dancing very early, and then, became part of a professional dance company, and I co-founded a dance company that still performs and teaches in Chicago. It's called Nejwa Dance Corps. And it was the whole excitement and passion of the arts, was the trajectory for my career. I went to Howard University Law School with the idea of being able to change the world. And so, moving to New York after Howard, I started practicing law in family court, but I had a very strong, desire to still work in the arts. So I basically taught myself how to become an arts administrator on my lunch hour. While practicing law, family court, prosecuting juveniles, and then volunteering across the street at a small arts organization called the Thelma Hill Performing Arts Center. And from there, I, really kind of learned some basic skills and resigned from family court and said, I'm going to do this full time. I wrote a letter to Arthur Mitchell at the Dance Theater of Harlem, and he hired me. And that began 9 years of incredible experiences, traveling around the world with first-class ballet company and really understanding what it takes to run an institution and protect the arts at the same time. And then I was engaged by George C. Wolfe at the Public Theater. He called me and asked me to come work with him to help make the audiences look like a subway stop. So I worked with George for 9 years, and that's how I got to Broadway, because the Public Theater was transferring plays to Broadway almost annually. And probably the play that certainly propelled my career forward was Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk. And with Savion Glover, the choreographer, and George, the director. And I just had the privilege of working on Noise Funk from its inception to the workshop, to the run at the Public, to Broadway, to the national tour. And in each of those components, I was responsible for developing diverse audiences. So that's why I was really able to hone my skills in that area. And then I left the Public after starting my family and opened up my own firm, Walker International Communications Group. And that was about 20 years ago. And that has enabled me to travel around the world, lecturing and touring. I've written my first book, Invitation to the Party, which has enabled me to really travel and lecture based on those principles of developing audiences. And I wrote my second book, which will be out in January. It's called
Okay. Have to have you back on to promote that.
I would love that. It's called Champions for the Arts, Successful Strategies for Community Engagement. And so I basically have developed the expertise in audience development and now community engagement. And so, as you mentioned, my clients are, quite varied. I have the Apollo Theater and New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Work with, smaller arts organizations such as Mind Builders in the Bronx. I work with the Westchester Arts Council, South Arts. I'm on the board of way too many organizations, but I'm very passionate about the arts, so I support wherever I can. I have a weekly blog called Arts and Culture Connection that comes out every Sunday. And that is kind of what I do. Oh, and I teach. I've been teaching since 1993 at Columbia University, New York University, and Bank Street. And fortunately, my students are doing the work in institutions around the world.
Well, again, that's a brief introduction. And even with that brief outline, I wonder how you have time to do anything. At Harlem Week in and of itself can be, you know, a major entity to have to juggle with. And how did you become connected to the Chamber, Harlem Week, Lloyd, and the rest of the team?
Through my work at Dance Theater of Harlem. We're in Harlem,
Okay.
and I just felt that ballet needs to be wherever people are living and moving and breathing. And I had heard about Harlem Week. And so I went to it one year and I didn't see any performing arts organizations there. They weren't, tabling or performing. And so I just started, this discussion, with Lloyd about being able to build upon that. And of course, he was open to that. I met Boza separately. Boza and I have been part of the Harlem Arts Alliance before this current administration. And we just started talking about how we could, really amplify what the Harlem Arts Alliance was doing. And we kind of recreated it. So that was, I think, late 80s that Boza and I really started. So they're both my brothers from different paths. And I'm so honored that we continue to find ways to journey together, creating access to the arts to our communities.
Well, and I know you was doing a number of things with NJ Pack in Jersey. And how did that come about, or what are you doing with them?
So New Jersey Performing Arts Center, is one of the leading performing arts centers in the country. And I had worked with Dave Rodriguez when he was running City College, and then also when he was running the Apollo Theater. And so John Schreiber, I met through my work as associate producer for Harlem Song, which was a musical that was produced at the Apollo Theater in 2002. And so both of them were working on that show, and they liked my work in bringing in diverse audiences. And so 2002, we did our work, and then the show finished. And then I got a call from both of them in 2012. And they said, "So Donna, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just working on some shows and, doing this, doing that, working with Alvin Ailey, they're one of my clients." And he said, "Oh, well, we need a vice president of marketing. And we just wondered if you could come out here for 3 months. Just come in 2 days a week and just supervise the staff, because they're kind of making decisions without really having a map." So I thought, oh, that sounds like a good deal. And also, I was really curious about Newark. I didn't know much about Newark at all. And to me, Newark was similar to Harlem. But of course, I'm very familiar and very comfortable in Harlem. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take what I know and bring it to Newark. And so after my first month working there, John asked me would I take the position permanently as vice president of marketing. And, I really thought about it, because I said, well, I have my company. I mean, how do I do this? I run a business. He said, I don't know, but 75% of you would be better than 100% of the people we've interviewed. So work it out. So I, promoted my staff, and they, one of my team members, Tony Israel, promoted her to managing director. So she was the face of the company. And then, I started working there full time, 5 days a week in Newark, commuting from Brooklyn.
Wow.
Well, that was quite an experience there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so that's what brought me there. And then I'm a consultant now, so I've done many roles there during the 10 years that I've been working at NJPAC, and I'm now consultant leading the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, as well as our social justice programs. So I love what I do, and I love the freedom that I have to choose to do what I'd like to do.
Which is a blessing in and of itself.
Absolutely.
And so Harlem Week this year, what are some of the things you're bringing to the table as it relates to entertainment, Broadway, and the like?
Well, Harlem Week will be hybrid this year. Last year, everything was virtual, of course, because we were all in the middle of a pandemic. But we are excited that we will be able to launch, Great Day in Harlem and then Harlem Day. Some of our signature events will be outdoors. We'll
Hmm.
be with live performances, and we'll have tabling from various vendors, and we're really happy about that, so we can kind of gather people again. The Harlem Week, is a 47-year-old celebration of arts, culture, education, civic engagement that centers in Harlem, but it's worldwide. And so we feature, a very huge arts and cultural component, both commercial and nonprofit. And so
Hmm.
we started developing the Broadway community to recognize that Harlem is a very important audience group and needs to be courted like any other group. And so we've been able to bring the Broadway production to Harlem Week so that our community can see what's going on, who are the performers, what are the songs, special ticket offers. And this is part of our community engagement. So this year, we'll have Ain't Too Proud, the Temptations musical, and they're going to have auditions actually.
Right, right, right.
And last year, when we had the auditions for Ain't Too Proud online, one of the people who won the audition was cast in the production from Harlem.
Wow.
So these auditions are a good place to be. We also will have Tina Turner's musical, and they're going to have dancing in the street. So they're going to have all of us out there, activating, dancing. We'll also have Lackawanna Blues, Ruben Santiago Hudson's one-man
Mm-hmm.
show. It's such a precious and wonderful show of his life growing up in Lackawanna and the values that he learned, that really made him be such an important figure in theater. And then we'll have Skeleton Crew, which is another play coming up by Lynn Nottage. And then we'll have Thoughts of a Colored Man, which is another play that's coming up. On Broadway this season, there will be 8 African American plays on Broadway.
Right, right.
Unprecedented. Never
Matter of
happened,
fact,
ever.
I know that Pat Stevens, the publisher of
Yeah,
Harlem
Harlem.
Community News,
Mhm.
uh, and I think that actually on the 8th, that paper comes out with the Blacks on Broadway, and each year it expands to the number of Blacks who are on Broadway. And this year, I'm sure it'll be more so. 8 plays. That's
Yes,
wonderful.
it's really incredible. And so we're, engaging with quite a few of them. We also have Girl from the North Country, which is another wonderful musical that's been very supportive of Harlem.
What's that? I've
Um,
heard a little bit about that, but I'm not.
I haven't seen it yet, but I
Mhm.
know it's a musical, and I'm sure it's going to be quite wonderful.
Hmm.
So we have that, and we have Moulin Rouge. They also will be, from Broadway. So those are some of the
Mhm.
partners that we have that
And
will.
they will take place in performances and other types of activities.
Not all of them are going to be performing, but they
Mhm.
will be tabling. They will have
Right.
information, and
Mhm.
they have provided virtual content because at the
Hmm.
same time, the whole week of Harlem Week,
It'll
so
be
Harlem
virtual.
Week,
Both. Yeah.
yes, we have a significant virtual programming, and that's where we'll be able to see content not only from the Broadway shows, but from quite a few other theaters, such as Lincoln Center, such
Right.
as Jazz at Lincoln Center, such as City Center, the Met Opera. Um, these are all places. New Jersey Performing Arts Center, the Moth, the Moth, we love them. Signature Theater, Mind Builders, which is a performing arts school in the Bronx. Nejwa Dance Corps, which is the company I co-founded from Chicago. Dance Theater of Harlem. They're going to perform live and virtual. So
Mhm.
all of this is some of the artistic content that we will be featuring.
Well, that's a pretty big array. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, Dance Theater of Harlem had a Dancing in the Streets program where they invited people to do some of the dances, which was really, really interesting to see people dancing with some of the professional dancers on the streets right
Yeah.
on 135th Street. So And I'm sure that has helped Broadway as it relates to people
Oh,
seeing the plays and wanting to go back to see more once they see them in their community.
it really makes a difference. And it's something that we've been educating our Broadway community about, significantly. We also have panel discussions. We're going to have a panel discussion on Broadway and
Mhm.
how does that impact the African American community. I know we're doing a tribute to Lois Alexander from fashion
Yes,
and looking
Black
at
Fashion Museum.
exactly. And of course, we'll have our spelling bee, our annual spelling bee, and
Mhm.
the children's carnival, so we'll
Right.
have children's festival. So we'll have many, many things for everyone. There's something for everyone in Harlem Week.
And the spelling bee is kind of special this year because, as many of you know, a lot of that was inspired by Matthew Trudeau,
Yes,
who was the son
Alex.
of the late Alex Trudeau, who
Mhm.
are from Harlem, and they have made sure that this spelling bee will be within his name and continue some of the things that he was doing with Jeopardy. So that will be in still be in uh, the Schomburg, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes. We're also having a David Dinkins tribute at the Schomburg as well.
right, right. One of the things there is that based on dying during the pandemic, Harlem wasn't able to really give the
Exactly.
type of memorial service to the incredible life of David Dinkins, and that will take place towards that. And even though it will be a little after, but I know that there will also be some mention of the 125th anniversary of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce within some all of that package, which um, is a long time, to
Yeah,
be consistent in creating the economic engine that um,
exactly.
pushes
Really drive.
Harlem, whether it's tourism or any of those other types of entities, spearheaded by the great late Honorable Percy Sutton. The
Mhm.
the on the 14th, which is going to be interesting this year because the 5K run,
Right, it's just
the New York Marathon, will be on the same day as the Dancing in the Streets, 135th Street event. So in that morning, 5,000 plus, because they were able to up the numbers. Hopefully that will continue. We don't know what's going on with the new variant that's taking place, but at this
that's
particular point, it went from 2,000 up into 5,000 as a cap, and that will be in that morning, and that whole day will be entertainment and the like on 135th Street between St. Nicholas and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. Tell us about some of the projects that you're working on now and some of the future projects that you're looking at, Donna.
yes. Um, I'm excited about what's next. I'm always looking into the future. Um, and
Well,
one,
that's what visionaries do.
yeah, and I feel that my whole career has been involved in nonprofit arts organizations. I'm celebrating my 40th anniversary working in arts organizations.
My goodness, you must have started when you was 5, right?
Yes, I was 6.
Yeah, a bright kid.
Well, one of the things I'm really committed to changing is the structure of how nonprofits really function so
Mm,
that the staff are more celebrated, that the staff feel more valued, that their artists are welcomed, in a really broad and significant way, that the community is part of the organization, not just seen as an audience, but they're part. There's all families, how
mm,
do we build this together? So I've been really developing some systems and structures that kind of address that. And one of the portals for this is the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that so many arts organizations are now focused on, and some of them were looking at this before the murder of George Floyd, but it certainly accelerated after the murder of George Floyd. I mean, my business completely changed. Before the pandemic, I was really focused on community engagement, audience development. But once the theaters shut down, there were no shows. There was no business in that area. And fortunately, because, the history I have in working in this area, the same clients and new clients sought my services out to help them build this culture of awareness. It's like, where do we start? And so the industry is really moving forward, in this direction of looking at, we have to create a sense of welcome and a sense of belonging. And we know we haven't done that. So what's the first step? How do we begin? And then how do we sustain this? Because this is not, oh yeah, we did this 5 minutes, check, and it's done. This is, as one of my colleagues, Marsha Brown from Rutgers University said, this is forever endeavor. And so you have to sink your feet in the ground and determine, I'm going to do this work, for as long as I'm a part of this. So I'm enjoying working with different organizations. I'm appreciating the opportunity to help guide them to being a human being, to help guide them to their own humanity, and to realize what racism really looks like in the world, but certainly in the arts sector. We have to call it, this is what it is, but we can change it. And so
the discussion of it, I think, is important. One of the things that in 2020, which I often hear my colleagues, and I agree that 2020 meant that you could see things clearer.
Right.
The vision was clearer. And a lot of the things that we've experienced of people of color for hundreds of years became more visible. People began to see it. I mean, based on some of the things that they saw on TV with the George Floyd and some of the other things. And that went around the world as it relates to
that's right.
Saying, enough is enough. We have to look at everybody in a certain way. And as you mentioned, it always starts at home, but it's something that has been hidden in many cases. And to the credit of our our past president, Trump, a lot of hidden issues came out because there was a justification of allowing for your true feelings as a white person towards blacks and brown to come out and be. And we saw that, in many different forms. I had an opportunity to look at some of the officers from Washington, D.C. talk about their experiences on January the 6th, which I had one person who said he was, in Iraq, and he didn't experience as much violence there in combat as he did on the steps of the White House. So from people with American flags, so I think that the entertainment world is always important because that's where images are made. And as you know, Sambo and all those were part of what the images were as it relates to people of color,
That's right.
And by having Broadway plays, 5 that you say?
No, it's actually 8.
8. Which, it's almost hard to believe because I remember coming up, if you saw a black person on Broadway, that was in and of itself.
Just see one.
Right, just one.
We were happy to get one. It's also a result of the We See You White American Theater effort. That letter writing campaign is actually a petition that was developed right after the murder of George Floyd from many of the performers on Broadway. And they wrote a letter to the producers to say, this has to stop. This is what you've been doing. This is what we want to see changed. We're going to be very transparent about it. We've built a website This is published in the New York Times and many other articles. We send letters. They send letters specifically to each theater telling them what it is that you need to do to become an anti-racist arts organization. So that was a revolution.
Now, there was a website that,
We See You White American Theater.
wow,
It
We
is
See You
bold.
White American Theater.
It is bold. It is
Wow, I didn't
dynamic,
know that.
and it has been a game changer.
And so letters and information, and this was from
It's huge. It was a 33-page document that they put together.
and this was
That
genders and colors and everything were part
Well,
of this.
allies. It's black and brown
Hmm.
that are leading it with allies.
Right.
With
That's
allies.
that's
There's many other producers, and it wasn't just it's not just actors and musicians. This was also technicians, musicians, anyone that touches Broadway or theater in general. They all became a part of this. So I think now it's thousands of signatories, that really have pledged that we're watching and we're discussing this, and we want to make sure we're in the room where these decisions are being made. So we see this reflected in, the Broadway League. They just hired their first diversity, equity, inclusion director. We see this in the Schubert organization, which has an extensive DEI plan. We see this in many of the theaters that have not just statements of support, but actually mapping out the action steps they're taking, how the boards are changing, how the appointments are changing of artistic directors. A number of theaters now have black and brown artistic directors, empowering them to make choices on what do we bring into the theater? What is it that we see? So there's a revolution that is going on. I'm very pleased to see after 40 years that we can begin to change, these dynamics where people are sitting at the table where decisions are being made. Still a long way to go, but the door is open.
and you feel that the website and the activism made a lot of this possible, as far as where we are now. These
I think it
opening of the doors.
created the momentum because it demanded accountability. There wasn't anything new that they brought about, but it was happening in, just small circles. But now with it being so transparent and the power of the membership of this, because you have major Broadway African-American stars, then that's what I think gave it the heat. There's also a number of other alliances developed, so you've got Black Broadway Men, there's quite a few. There's Broadway Advocacy Coalition, and then there's now training that's going on. So that at Columbia University, I know there are 2 programs specifically designed to train black and brown producers how to produce on Broadway. So it's like, how do you get into that club? Because they're not opening the door to let you in. So this is how we get in, teaching them. These are the skills. And through that way is, how you can be a part of those power brokers. So it's exciting.
Now, what other courses that you teach at Columbia?
I teach. I created courses. I'm the kind of person that likes to fill in what's missing. And so what I observed in the curriculum at both NYU and Columbia, that the students, and I teach in the grad programs, I teach in grad theater programs, and I was concerned that we were allowing students to graduate without them having any understanding of our Black and brown communities. And I went to the deans of both departments and said, we can't do this. We cannot allow these students to leave here without this understanding, exposure, sensitivity. So I designed a course, audience development and community engagement for bringing diversity to the arts. And so in my course, before the pandemic, in my course, I would choose 5, multicultural arts organizations that we would physically visit and hear from them. What are their challenges? And then students would create a paper to address those challenges, which would be given to the arts organization so they could benefit from their expertise. And the students loved this because it was boots on the ground. It's like, we're here. So we went to, Woody's Theater, New Federal Theater. We went to American Indian Museum. We went to Asian American Arts Alliance. We went to places that I wanted them to get a sense of what diversity looks like in the arts, but also what small organizations struggle with as well as large ones, which is very similar, the infrastructure of that. And so, their grade was based on building a solid plan that they could implement to address the specific problem. So that was how I developed that class. And then I spent my class at Columbia. I had more time. I had 15 weeks there, so I was able to add on the equity, diversity, inclusion component. So we used to spend time really understanding what that means, and then how do we apply this to the multicultural community to make sure there's inclusion. And my students thrive. They love this. They thrive. They thrive. And I know they'll be a success wherever they go. The knowledge that they get from the program overall, but it was my personal goal was to make sure that they're prepared to be leaders today, what we need today. And that is this understanding of what it means to embrace diverse communities and celebrate that, not as an austerity, but this is your mission. And this is something that you understand, only I can do this. So that's kind of what we've been doing. Some of the classes have been very emotional. Sometimes students have cried because they realize that the instances where they've been racist, and they said, oh my gosh, I've said this, I thought this, I didn't know this. I said, we have tomorrow. That's what you did today. Tomorrow, you're going to do different because now you're aware. And they talk about, well, how do I share this with my family? Because my family says this, at the dinner table, we make jokes and we use a lot of books. I'm an academic, so I'm always reading. And so we use a lot of different books and articles, thought leaders who can help inform them on how to frame the language. But you understand that this is part of your responsibility as an arts leader. So that's
well, and it's interesting, as you know, there's a movement in some states to erase some of what they call unflattering history of America, so that people will not understand the truth, which is probably the worst thing that can happen, because you can never get past the truth without actually facing it, accepting it, and moving on, as you had mentioned. But as long as you try to hide it, similar to, again, the Six saying that it was a love fest and people were just there as tourists. If you get a chance to watch some of the coverage today of the first panel of interviews as it relates to that, and hear those officers talk about their experiences. And actually, you can see it, but which always amazes me. There's something that you can see, and then you say that what you're seeing is not really happening. When that happens, there's not much you can say to somebody, that they see that is not right. But still, there's an old joke is that what do you say to somebody with two black eyes? And you say nothing because somebody already told them twice. So, that's it's just beyond the understanding. But to be an American has had so many different layers depending on who you are and what you are, that a lot of this, even though it can be harmful to some or hard to digest for others, but I believe that this is a good thing because it's coming out. It's coming out and it's becoming visible. And in many cases, the lines are being, which side are you going to be on? Are you going to continue how you operate? Or are you going to understand that, there needs to be some changes if this whole thing that everyone talks about, especially in a certain group of people, how America is great, but it needs to be great for everybody. not just for,
Exactly. And it
just,
never was for us.
no, it wasn't,
I've been reading the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. I
right?
think it is the number one book that every single American must read.
Uh-huh.
It's brilliant because
And what's the focus of the book?
see, the focus of the book is that the number one issue in America is not racism, but it's casteism. Because
Mm,
casteism is underneath racism. The racism becomes just a platform to display that. But it's
mm-hmm.
fundamentally about your place, where you belong. And so that for us, having come to America as slaves, we were already perceived as not human. And so from the
Exactly.
very beginning, it wasn't even about racism. It was about this is your place as a
Right.
slave. This is what you do. And so how that has grown in America, and then she compares this to India, their caste system, and then I believe Germany. And so
Right.
she looks at this globally as, how this idea of fixed place, creates such limitations, such discrimination and hatred, you
Hmm.
know, and that so many people don't even realize this is what they're feeling. So
Because you grow up in it, you think that's what it is. You know,
exactly. She
it's
talks
part
about
of, and that's why there's a lot of pushback. Because as you were saying, with the people there at their dinner table, how do you tell your uncle or your parents that what they're saying is not really correct? So, but what your role is, Donna, again, the arts are extremely important. All of the images, all of the communications, all of the things that sometimes can't be said other than in a certain type of a format are extremely important. And while you were at Columbia, did you ever run into my good friend Jamal Joseph, who was
not at
the
Columbia, but
co-chair?
I certainly know Jamal.
Yeah, but
The other challenge with these universities, there's very little opportunity to interact with other professors outside of your department.
right,
We don't have a platform where we would meet, and
right.
like passing each other on campus. But there's not, that collegial kind of, let's gather everyone together and move forward with things. I haven't, if they are having those, I have not been invited to them. So, that's something else that would be great. But I appreciate being able to be in the room to help stimulate these young minds. I'm excited about our millennials, our Generation Z. I think that they are true warriors. So much of the movement and change that we've seen, not just with race and ethnicity, but with our environmental justice, is coming from a young voice and saying this has to change, this has to stop. So that's exciting. So I want to be wherever I can to support that.
Now, you mentioned how you were able to pivot during the pandemic, but I'm sure that, well, I know because a lot of the food feeds that we still have with the chamber, many of them were what you really call starving actors, because that was,
Yes,
there was no restaurants to work at, there were no
that's
other
right.
outlets to work,
No
and
show.
if you were, you know, so I'm sure you've seen a lot of that um, misery as
Yeah.
relates to Broadway being shut down, and I'm sure that you're happy to see that things are beginning to slowly but surely come back together. What do you see about the fall and the rest of the year as far as Broadway and what you're doing and your projects?
Well, I think that, Broadway is going to open in a very dynamic way. There's, all these new shows and new artists coming to Broadway for the first time, new directors, new producers. So that brings a freshness that I think is exciting. Um, I, I, I am hopeful that just the opportunity for these playwrights and actors, musicians of color to be able to say, I'm on Broadway is something that we can continue to grow and develop, as well as not just Broadway, but also regionally with all the other theaters and nationally, so that tours can develop out of this, and perhaps movie deals, so there's a trajectory that can happen based on the work and the support and interest. I think that in terms of the projects that I'm focusing on, again, I really want to build this DEI culture into arts organizations, as well as social justice. In New Jersey Performing Arts Center, we started a Standing in Solidarity program a week after the murder of George Floyd. And our initiative from that is our social justice program. So each month we highlight specific topics that affect the Black community. And those have been absolutely brilliant. The one program we did was called White Fragility. And it was an all-white panel. And we just told them, you need to work this out. You all have to talk about what these issues are and what is your commitment to move forward. And that was one of our most popular programs, that one. We've addressed policing the police. We've talked about educational reform. We've talked about voting, the census, issues that are pertinent to us. And so I love having this platform to explore how we can engage, educate, and motivate our communities. So we've got a whole new season we have planned coming up, doing a panel on colorism, which will be really
a panel on what?
Colorism.
Colorism. Okay.
Yes, and how we know within African American community, Caribbean, Indian, African, Latino, Asian, wherever there's been colonization, there is this belief that the lighter I am, the better
you are,
So we're going to look at that. Why is that? Where'd that come from? And how do we change it? Those coloring creams are actually illegal in some of the countries in Africa because of the damage that it does to the skin.
Yeah, to try to lighten your skin and change your nose and lower your lips. And on the other side, people of the European persuasion are trying to get their lips bigger, butts bigger and all of that stuff. It's kind of ironic how it's, matter of fact, I wrote an article about how racism is a form of mental disorder because, we all suffer from post-traumatic stress PTSD, because coming up from, slavery, that keeps coming into your mindset, just like with the white people, they have this issue of trying to act as if it's not there, which is also an issue. And that dates back to when the founding fathers talked about all men are created equal. Even they didn't say anything about women, but they were slaveholders. So there was contradictions in this country from the beginning of it, even though the first person who died in the Revolutionary War was a Black person. And since then, Blacks have always, people of color have always been involved. But there seemed to be, as you say, this kind of caste system, which is an interesting concept as relates to that, and that's based on the color of your skin in most cases. And people have been able to kind of act as if that wasn't what was going on. But we're talking to Donna Walker-Kuhn, who is on the board of directors of Harlem Week Inc. and has her own company, the Walker International Communications Company, and is a person who has written lectures, talks about the theater. Have you ever had any focus on film and video?
Film, yes. I've worked on a few films, but primarily it's the performing arts that I work in. And the visual arts, work with museums as well. Right. So I've worked on some documentaries, not any of the major commercial, well, one major commercial film, Nights of Rodanthe. That was George Wolfe. He directed that, starred Diane Ladd, and we did the marketing, some marketing for that. But I'm a performing arts girl. I love
Yeah.
being honest.
You
That's
like
all.
the real thing, right?
Yes, I do. I do.
Now, the first Harlem Week outdoor event will be on the 8th at the
Yes,
U.S. Grant Memorial Park.
that's right.
Are there any scheduled Broadway performances that will take place during that time?
We're finalizing the schedule now. That's actually what Volta Rivers is leading.
Right.
So we had a call, I think it was yesterday. Yes, and he's really putting everything into place. But it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a little bit of everything. So people
So,
should come out August
and
8th.
we'll
If you
and
feel
we'll report. Actually, this show and next week's show will be dedicated to Harlem Week, thanks to Soul City
great,
and the Harlem Tourism Board. So we'll be able to keep
great,
people posted, plus the Harlem Community News and WHCR. And
right?
of course, we have a lot of media partners that will keep
Yes.
the schedule going. But you see here, if you want to get more information, you can go to harlemweek.com, www.harlemweek.com for a schedule, which is constantly updated, as you say,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
finalizations are taking place. The two major outdoor events again, three actually,
Great.
the
Hmm.
8th, the 14th, and the 15th.
Correct.
And when you see these Broadway plays and you see people coming out, uh, the person that we're talking to now, Donna Walker Kuhn, has a major role in making that happen, and we thank you for it.
Thank
When we
you.
talk about these years, these 20 years, these 40 years, it just does not seem that long. And obviously, Donna, you don't look past 41, so I don't know how you were doing things for 40 years. I don't, I they, I don't know whether this was racist, but they say black don't crack,
It's true.
but
It's true.
but
But when
it's
you do
hard
what
to.
you love, I think that keeps you vibrant as well.
Right, yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it, as they say. But if anyone wants to reach you
Mhm.
for as a consultant or to find out more about it, what is there any other venue besides the Walker Communication Group.com?
No, the website is perfect because there's an inquiry form on there. So you would just fill it out, tell me what you're interested in, and I always get back in touch. So the website is designed specifically to handle these inquiries. So I
So
welcome
people
them. Hmm. I
and
welcome.
again, that's WalkerCommunicationsGroup.com.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Donna, with all of the things that you do, not even to include Harlem Week, which in and of itself can take up more time than people might feel that they would want to give,
Hmm.
appreciate your time here
Thank you.
and all that you do. One of the things that I miss that took place, I think, 2 years ago was when Johnny Mathis came to MJ Pack to
Oh, yeah.
perform.
Yes.
I'm not sure what happened that I wasn't able to make that, but people are still talking about that, you
Wow.
know. But you
We've got
know,
booking everybody now. Everybody's coming back. So this season is going to be fabulous.
so you have to keep in contact. We have to get you back when your new book comes out. We have to get
Yes.
you back to talk about that and promote it.
Yes.
And thank you, Donna, for the many years of being involved, helping the culture, helping people understand things that um, are important as it relates to our culture. Some of the things that people might not understand about inclusive relationships
Exactly.
and what you've done as it relates to Harlem and some of the institutions that you've been involved in. So appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. And we'll be in contact. And for those who, again, are listening, um, Donna Walker Kuhn is, uh, we haven't even touched many. I mean, she's modest. And obviously, we're running out of time now, but we would need at least two more shows to talk about all your adventures outside of the country and all of the things that
Yes.
you've done
That's been
as
incredible.
relates to
Yes.
bringing our culture to other cultures, which has been very important. Are you going to teach any other classes at Columbia at any time, or is that something that?
I teach well at that one. That's good a lot, based on everything else that I do. But I
Uh-huh.
teach 3 classes at NYU. So I
Ah,
teach an equity, diversity, inclusion course, is specifically that, and then I teach cultural tourism. So those are 3 classes that
so
I
we
teach.
have to, I have to talk to you about, my new tourism agency as we
Yes,
start walking about that because
happy to.
we're going to look at doing some things, bringing people in to different locations, as it relates to cultural tourism. But Donna, and we have to talk about the Harlem Tourism Board too. I'd like to get you involved with the Harlem
Okay.
Tourism Board in some kind of way, even though I know that your time is, so limited. But your expertise and understanding of different things will be extremely important.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
I will.
For,
You too.
and for those who are listening, please, again, Harlem Week starts actually on the 6th, but the first outdoor event is at Grant's Tomb, as we call it from the old days, but U.S. Grant Memorial Park on August the 8th. And then on 135th Street between St. Nicholas and Malcolm X Boulevard on the 14th and 15th. But check out harlemweek.com. There's, as Donna Walker mentioned, there's a lot of virtual stuff, a lot of content from Lincoln Center and many other locations that from the 6th to the 15th, you will be highly uh, entertained as it relates to the culture and the history of the most famous urban community in the world. So next week we will continue this special um, programming dealing with Harlem Week. Actually, by that time, we'll be moving right into the final 2 events, and of course, on the 15th is the 47th anniversary of Harlem Day, which will be celebrated on 135th Street. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you, Soul City, Matt McCoy, Jasmine Pfeiffer, for allowing for us to have this platform to communicate the information that's really very important for people to understand as to how things are coming back in our community and how you might be able to be involved. So this is Tony Rogers saying, see you next week and be blessed. Take care.
This is Kier Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Urbanology.